This is a Heart and Hand production.
Good evening, welcome to the Rangers Prism. We look forward back and at the current state of play. I'm Martin in the chair, as always, and joined by my good friend Adam. How are you this week, Adamski?
We clearly do too many podcasts together because, as always, for our second show is would not be a thing. But yes, I am. I'm doing good. Thank you. Thank you for all the feedback on last week's show on YouTube, Patreon, Twitter. I think it was really good to get that feedback. As you said last week, we don't do a lot of just me and you talking about Rangers anymore, so it's good to bring it back for a bit.
We'll start with Australian television's second best export, which goes home and away. And this obviously has been a bit of a discussion of late with the drop points at Livy on Sunday, Easter Road and Fir Park in the mind previously before that, Adam. I'll probably go down on the side of Livy just being one of those days, and they happened to all teams. It was not the kind of frozen in fear, negative, overly cautious, stodgy, creating nothing kind of games, which I thought Easter Road and Fir Park pretty much were. I thought this, with 31 efforts in goal or whatever, how good those were is another case in point, but the goalkeeper also had a very good day. But there is a wider issue, is there not, about how we set up at home, compared to how we do away, even though over the course of the season, relative to the league, which is of course what league championships are all about, it's actually not that bad, but it is in our minds.
Yeah, so that's the thing that I am quite intrigued about by this season, because there are a few good teams. I'll stop short of very good for a good reason, but there are a few good teams who are capable of taking more points off of each other. Everyone is praising how competitive the league is. Now, competitive doesn't necessarily equate to Liverpool versus Man City going to the wire 2 or 3 years ago, both teams going at it. That's a different thing. Everybody would like it to be great competitive where we're smashing it, but then there would be moans about how there's a big 4 or a big 6. People need something to say, I guess, or put something in a box. So for me, I am not less up or down about the results. That would just be a plain lie. But I am more aware that there are going to be more twists and turns than there would be usually. When we get to this point, usually there's a twist and Rangers fall. And whether or not Celtic then just go on and win the league is the big debate point from previous years. Whereas this year, someone falls, there's 2 teams, maybe even 3 teams that are sort of waiting there, and it's not as cut and dried. We've seen that over the last few weeks. It's not. You think you've got a big statement win that's going to make you the front runner for it, and you get ground back. Another team thinks maybe they will, and then they get ground. So that's retraining our brain to that is fascinating. I would say over the last 3 games there is a problem. I would say the only pattern that you can really take from those 3 away games that we're talking about is the only consistent thing is that they were not played at Ibrox. I think in terms of how the games went, there is, I think, a slight issue with cautious team selections away from home. Albeit I don't think
that,
yeah, albeit I don't think, as you said yourself, I don't think you could ever look at the Livingston game and say Rangers did not deserve to win that game. So maybe that's an interesting point to hone in on.
On that then, okay, so I'm going to guess Ryan Nadiri was very much we would rather not play him on this pitch. If we absolutely have to, we will. And, he's first sub at the very least, if or at the very most, if he was fully fit and they had no concern. So that changes then, obviously, the team that I think we all liked at Ibrox against Hearts, that set up everybody in that kind of position, everybody fit and kind of rearing to go. That changes that quite a lot to me. Take that to one side. There's this longer term caution away from home. But Rangers managers over the last, from Gerrard on really, I think I've wrestled with this thing, and I'd be very, very interested in your thoughts here, because you do have the Russell Martin take, which doesn't matter. it's football pitch, grass is green, ball's round, I will play the way I want to, we should be enough. And it ignores the reality of Scottish football, really, in terms of going away from home, winning battles, and then playing. And maybe Gerrard started to be making a laid a marker, really, at Pittodrie in that first game, that Rangers are not going to be bullied the way that they were under Pedro and Murty and all that kind of thing. But what it did was make the whole 90 minutes, a lot of the time, what these teams wanted. And the amount of draws in those first couple of seasons were kind of testament to that. I think Rangers managers got a really, really difficult balancing act between being tough enough, but also still being able to outplay, overpower, overrun weaker opposition. It seems to be something that they very rarely get right, or at least very rarely get right under pressure, because the good away runs that we seem to have had is when the thing's gone, new managers come in, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden we play with a bit of freedom.
Yeah, I agree. In previous seasons, I do think we need to be careful about only talking about some of these things in negative moments. There isn't. I've seen quite a bit on social media about leadership and mentality and the old things that always come out as soon as there's drop points. Yes, that can be an issue, but I think we need to be careful. There is no one saying that Rangers had a really great leadership or mentality when we came behind to beat Hearts, or we came behind to beat Celtic going in at half-time in that Celtic game. I would imagine there was quite a lot of PTSD for everyone involved. So we need to be quite careful with that. We tend to just win and then really celebrate it and everyone is amazing and then forget about it. But there is no talk about, okay, well, that builds a little bit of mentality. We only seem to reach for those words when points get dropped. And to your point as well about winning the battles and then playing, I think over the piece, certainly over this Danny Röhl piece, I think that's exactly what they've done in most games. You look at some of those stodgy games against Aberdeen, St Johnstone, it's not St Johnstone, sorry, St Mirren, Kelly, and a few others where no one says Rangers won the battle and got that over the line. It's more people like me saying we can't carry on like that. We're not creating enough. Blah blah blah. So it's like if you win a game, it is a net in people's mind. It's just it doesn't. It's not really a positive or a negative. As soon as you don't win, and we focus only on negative patterns, I think you're going to come out with a negative outcome. Is my thought on it. So I definitely agree. I think we are cautious in our lineups away from home. I think in those last three lineups, I haven't enjoyed any of them, to be honest. But like we said, I can't hand on heart say that the team selection was the massive issue against Livingston. What I would suggest on that is I think most people are agreed that this 4-2-2-2-2 represents a really good opportunity for Rangers. We've scored a lot of goals using that in the 3 or 4 games that we have. If it all hinges on one player, it maybe one player that was signed 2 hours before the window ends, I should say. It maybe makes me question it a little bit. If we're basically saying that Bojan Milewski just won't play that and can't play that unless he's rotating or resting, then is there something else we could have done in the January transfer window to mitigate that a little bit there? So I can see both sides.
Do you agree then? Do you think it is dependent on one player? Because clearly they didn't want to play him and we look very different, whereas he does give us something. And I think Shamiti benefits from that. I think the whole thing looks different. Or is this just the fact, again, at Ibrox, it has clicked. It works. I'd fancy Rangers to beat pretty much anyone at Ibrox at this moment in time. But we go to the bottom place team in the league and, again, one of those days. But the players don't always look as comfortable. I remind you, it's just far too much of an illusion that I'm drawing from Nadiri not playing and us looking a very, very different team to the one that played against Hearts.
Yeah, so I would say the overall system and the changes for some of those players, like you mentioned, would be a positive, would be a net positive if it was Majowski playing instead of Nadiri. Chermiti has shown, I think, that he plays with a 2, you get more out of him, for sure. I think in the fleeting appearances we've seen in Majowski, you could probably argue the case for that as well. Whether they both work together, I don't know. But again, it's an overall net positive than having one of them playing up front on their own. In my mind, it must be. Gassama, we've spoken about before, capable of good things, has that sort of game-breaking ability. We've seen it with the sending off, making that run on the right-hand side in the game, but played a lot of minutes. More time off the bench for me would be the one. You're then able to get Moore, Skov Olsen, Antman, Bayrami, who came in and contributed as well in those sort of two behind. And the fullbacks as well, which I think is an underrated thing. The fullbacks were a little bit deeper at the weekend, and that sort of speaks more into that sort of cautious aspect. We've seen Suter passing the ball to Tavernier, and both of them miscontrolled, and then that results in the second goal. If that was the game against Hearts the week before, the right back is a lot further forwards. The midfield is a bit more coordinated, that Suter can play different types of passes in, or just be a bit more aggressive and hit the long ball. So I think it's all part of the same thing. For me, from what I've seen, and it's very, very limited, I think that 4-2-2-2-2 with Majowski in it in place of Nadiri would be an overall positive than maybe some of those away setups where we've had Chermiti on his own with Asgard in behind him and then Gassama off one side. I feel like it probably would be, but that's not to say that Nadiri isn't a huge miss, because he's that guy, as I said last week, he's the guy who goes and presses, hunts it down after Chermiti gets the first contact, and he is very, very good at that so far, again, albeit in limited minutes.
Okay, you've had a good week on X, Twitter, whatever. A bit of a mega thread on Danny Röhl's start. Your opportunity now to verbalise that, Adam, and explain why you're so optimistic.
Yeah, I was surprised, I have to say, when I had a look. I was doing some preparation for this show. Stevie Smith took over the Dundee United game right before Danny Röhl came in, but then there's been 20 league games since then. The only teams that we haven't played twice are Dundee United, and then obviously Celtic, who will play at the weekend. So he's pretty much played every team twice, home and away, which for I'm absolutely nowhere near competent, never mind an expert in data, but that is a very good spread of all those complexities that you mentioned, playing a team at home versus away. It's a long enough period that you can figure out crazy games like Livingston and Dundee United, and they just become the outliers. So I was really enthused, particularly when you overlay it with Russell Martin's games at the start. So as we know, as everyone knows, you don't need data to tell you this, there were big improvements from when Russell Martin left to Danny Röhl. We've seen us be harder to beat. We've seen us be better at set pieces. We've seen us be more organised, more aggressive, press better, all that sort of stuff. What I have found really interesting is that jump has happened again. Not quite as much, but still quite close. That jump has happened again between Danny Röhl's first 10 games and his second 10 games. So we've had two pretty sizable, and I'm talking 10, 12, 15% jumps in progress for quite a lot of metrics, such as open play chance creation. That is the one that I've spoken about for years. Rangers need to get better at cutting teams open in low blocks, counter attacks, whatever. Creating chances from open play, 10% better from Russell Martin to Danny Röhl's first 10 games, and then 9% better again between Röhl's first and last 10. Chances against, 21% higher from Russell Martin to Danny Röhl. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. And since January, it's remained 18% lower than under Russell Martin. The net of both of those, so XG difference, you'll see a lot of graphs. Andrew Caskey does quite a bit of this on X, some of the Rangers Review boys as well. Basically, the difference between how good your chances are you create and how good you concede. It is 96% up from Russell Martin to Danny Röhl there, and then it's improved another 38% in those last 10. So that's a big improvement. I have to say that level that is at is still not amazing or enough in normal seasons. As we just said at the start, probably not a normal season. If we are consistently doing that, it may be the team that is the most consistent. Team that is the most consistently okay to good could be winning this title this year. So that is quite important for just now. Open play shots, kind of similar, dropped a little bit, but then they've increased a lot in the last 10 games. That speaks to what the manager has been saying. He came in, stabilised, focused on defence and set pieces, and then from basically what we're talking about is from the the Parkhead game onwards. These last 10 games, starting to ramp it up, seeing a little bit more attacking intent, and it's good to see the data in there. Set pieces, we know 30% up from Martin to Danny Röhl's first 10, then another 35% in Röhl's last 10. I think we mentioned last week it's evened out a little bit, but Rangers are still very, very good at creating chances from set pieces. Whether that evening out dips dramatically, whether it keeps going, who knows? So I would say I'm optimistic. I wouldn't say I'm so optimistic, but I would say things are definitely, like I said on the thread, things are definitely moving in the right direction. Has been a few dodgy results away from home. Livingston is a complete freak, but it was just sort of. I was more enthused by seeing that sort of underlying data than maybe my head thought following Sunday's game. Longer term views I think are great on these things. Key moments, key games, key seconds will define games and will define title races. But broadly speaking, I think the team that does those things that I mentioned better than anyone else will have more success. Whether that's 10 games, 50 games, 100 games, you can't really tell because things change, transfer windows, injuries, new managers, all that sort of stuff. But broadly speaking, things are trending in the right direction. Will it be enough? Who knows?
Managers usually take the credit for that, so that was all part of the plan. That's all part of the design. How much of it do you think is methodical and I need to fix this first and then I'll get on to this, and therefore you're seeing a chunk improve here and then another tranche as you like, rather than the big upswing and then a kind of earlier plateauing? I don't know. Not sure that new manager bounce is much of a thing in football these days. It seems to be cliche now, but how much of this is part of the plan?
The set pieces one I would be wary of, I have to say, just because it was 0 to 100 and everything was hitting the back of the net. We did create quite a bit from set pieces at the weekend there, but that is the first in a while. I'm not sure the last set piece goal. I know we definitely scored a couple against Queen's Park, so it may be a couple of games ago, but one or two are going in every game, or it felt like Fernandez was going to score 2 or 3 every game. So that would be the one I'd be wary of, that could dip quite a bit more. But like I said, we still should be, by the numbers, we still should be scoring 1 every 3 games right now. If that dips even 10, 20%, it's still decent. So that'd be the one I'd be wary of. Everything else sort of makes sense in my head from watching the games, what the manager has said, and then looking at these numbers. We did stabilise. We had to stabilise because we were an absolute mess. We were harder to beat. We got Fernandez into the team. We were a little bit more aggressive off the ball. We had two defensive-ish midfielders. We weren't as staggered as we were with that. The big thing that he probably can't really say or might have worked in his favour is he came in and had 10 weeks or so before the transfer window opened, so he won't be coming out and saying these guys are hopeless up front, basically. But internally, he'll be thinking, do what I can to get to the window and get some firepower in. I don't think anybody would argue he's certainly tried to get firepower in and tried to improve the attacking intent of the team. Whether or not that'll be enough, whether those players are the difference makers in this, I don't know. As always, it will come down to what the players do, but I do think there has been some method to it. Yeah,
that's the current. We'll come back to the future just at the very end, quite quickly. Let's go to the past then, and what to select for this week in Rangers history. Well, everybody, mainly me, but lots of people have been making comparisons with the season and 1997-98. So at this week in 98, it is quite interesting to look back. Adam, Rangers, Celtic and Hearts all on 52 points at the start of this week. 10 games to go. Rangers went to Rugby Park on the Tuesday night. Celtic and Hearts, I think, were both at home on the Wednesday. Do you want that team, that Rangers team from that night at Kelly?
One of those things you look back and you think, how did this happen? But yeah.
Yeah, it is a bit like that. Alberts was missing. I think Alberts was injured. Gorham and goal, obviously. Perini, Goff, Bjorkland, Moore. I'm not entirely sure who's playing at left back. possibly Bjorklund. They maybe just are taking turns. A midfield three of Jonas Tern, Paul Gascoigne, and Barry Ferguson. There we are. And Laudrup, Negri, and Seb Rosenthal in the forward line. That's certainly according to Sky. Gascoigne would pull up. Surprise, surprise, at this particular point in his career. And he'd be replaced by Gordon Durie, who suffers quite a bad head knock. I think with Gary Holt, he gets up and plays for like 3-4 minutes and then just goes down again and is stretchered off. And there were genuine concerns at the time that this could be incredibly serious, in fact, grave. Not to be, thankfully. There are some slight similarities, Adam, with it was a 1-1 draw, of course. Rangers aren't as bad as I thought, and have most of the ball, as you would imagine. Great. Rugby Park is not a thing, by the way, at this point. Rangers like going to Rugby Park at this moment in time. Very good record against Kilmarnock there. But it's individual errors. I mean, Gorham and Bjorklund do not speak. It's just a long ball from Gordon Marshall. Bjorklund headers it past the post. It's going past the post. Gorham completely comes out. Therefore, it is nowhere near his goal. It's knocked in. And we have lost the ball, but there's just no kind of cohesion and a bit of composure, really. It's throwing shit at the wall a wee bit. I read that team out. I mean, where does all that fit in? It's basically just putting players on the pitch, and there's bits of that in the performance. Richard Goff's popping up because we don't have enough attackers, so he's going to get in the box and stuff. And the equaliser comes from probably the only guy who does have that composure, and that's Jonas Tern. Again, an absolute mess in the box, and Rangers somehow get the ball to him, and he just chips the ball over Marshall in the defence, and then with 20 minutes to go, remember, I didn't have a ticket to watch this live on Sky, and it never happened. And the kind of familiar feelings to some of the away games there, of just real tension gripping everybody, and no real, as I said, no real composure or cohesion about it. Played Hearts and Celtic both won convincingly, so Rangers 2 points behind both. And we played Hearts at Ibrox on the Saturday. A bit of snow around. We played with an orange ball for reasons in the first half, even though the snow hadn't really taken or was lying. So it was a really odd first half with that ball kind of bouncing about. Stupid goal again. And Albert's equalising just before half time, and a stupid goal to let Hearts back in. I think Big Jim Hamilton did the easiest tap-ins. Again, Bjorklund just trying to shepherd the ball out. This tension, this utter nervousness about simple decisions. Albert scored late in injury time, as he was pretty much doing every week at that point. But I remember leaving thinking that's just it's not enough. We needed to win. Celtic the opportunity to go 5 ahead. And of course, it would get very close. The record of both teams, I think, is pretty interesting. Those last 10 games, Rangers won 6, lost 3, drew 1. Hearts won only 2, lost 2, but drew 6. And Celtic would draw 4, win 5, but only lose 1. So that was obviously to us. And again, it's the draws that kill you. Hearts did what everyone kind of assumed they would do, which is just crumble when it came to March-April time, even though they had a very good team and were very buoyant and all the rest of it. And there probably is a bit of work I'll maybe do for the review at some point if I've got the time, and dig in a wee bit more as to those kind of closing weeks, which did swing, and of course that double header, the Old Firm Cup, Old Firm League and Cup double header, both the cup game at Parkhead, of course, and the league game at Ibrox, and Albert seemingly scoring the same carbon copy goal, and then Amoruso at Pitaudry, and Kilmarnock at Ibrox, and just staggering over the line, and I think I've said this a few times, that feels exactly how this is likely to end up, where a team is bedraggled and bruised, but is left holding it. And yeah, decent overall play, Adam, but lacking that bit of coolness. The selection is wild. It's just very imbalanced, and solid, performers like Bjorklund and Gorham. It's individual errors at the back which seemingly get punished all the time at the moment, and then it would do against Hearts at Ibrox on the Saturday. But it's very different from September. It's even different from the winter, and that's why a wire title is a different animal from one that a team just gets that lead and just kind of sees it out. And yeah, the more I think about that season, the more relevant it feels.
What I think quite interesting about this, I'll try and articulate this, which I struggle with sometimes, is it sort of crosses both of our wheelhouses, because I was just looking there, and like you said, Rangers 6 wins, 3 defeats, and one draw from that run-in, so 19 points. In the last 10 games of this season so far, like the 10 games that we've just played, Celtic and Hearts, 6 wins, 1 draw, 3 defeats, 19 points. Rangers are sitting with, at the minute, 10 games, 7 wins, 3 draws, 24 points, 5 points more. If we repeat that, 24 points again, and Celtic and Hearts repeat those, Rangers win the league by a point. It all depends who those wins and draws and defeats are against in this run-in, which is fascinating. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly. I said draws are a killer. I mean, draws are usually a killer. That's what it feels in Scotland, just because it's so rare. It used to be so rare to lose. But Celtic drew those 4 games. They only lost 1, but that's not championship winning form. I mean, it's very kind of crumbly, really. I'll even kind of bring that into a wee bit more. I mean, the last 5 games of the season, they win 2. You know what I mean? And it's not as if they're miles in front and they're just kind of holding teams off at arm's length. So it's counterintuitive, but every point seems to be a prisoner in these kind of title races, and draws maybe aren't the end of the world the way they are in, let's say, 02-03, when it's just, you're winning every week. You are winning every weekend, or those Real Madrid Barcelona seasons where a draw is just catastrophic. It's messy. It is very, very messy. The factor, of course, is Hearts, but whether they will do what they did in 98, what they did in 86, and because, again, very rarefied atmosphere and all that. But it's just the points that Rangers shipped that season to teams at the bottom end of the league. Aberdeen and Motherwell, dreadful season from memory, and actually a very good record against Celtic. It was just that Paul Lambert winner at New Year that was only kind of mark that Celtic really kind of made on Rangers that season. It isn't always about the top end. It's kind of doing the business, but it's someone's cup final, right? Looking ahead then, Adam, what are you feeling about the weekend?
We'll feel a lot more confident if Rangers go with the 4-2-2-2. I think we're moving into a period now where I think Celtic may be a little bit more reactive under Martin O'Neill. I think they've always been the aggressors in these games for longer than you'd like to admit, certainly for 3 or 4 years anyway. I think it feels like Rangers need to flip that just now. I think we tried to at Parkhead. I think we in my opinion, we sensed blood, if you like, before the game, and maybe got ourselves a little bit caught between 2 ideals, trying to go out and press and be aggressive and getting picked apart at times. We were, to my mind, lucky to go in 1-0 down, but again, that regrouping in there and adding a bit more control into the midfield with Diamande eventually allowed us to go and win that game fairly comfortably, I would say, as comfortably as those games can be. I'm advocating for the same thing to happen again in terms of going out and being on the front foot, but I think it's a bit of a different animal now. You'll be talking about, off the top of my head, 3-4 players playing that probably differently that should be suited to what we need to do. So yeah, I think it needs to be that 4-2-2-2-2, even if we have some injuries. We don't know yet. We're recording before press conferences, etc. Albeit he's been a bit tight-lipped on injuries over the last week or so. But yeah, I think that needs to be it for me. We go out from the off and dominate the game in the way we did against Hearts. Don't get ourselves caught up in our own heads if we do something daft like we did against Hearts. Make some silly mistakes. Just keep going. Even if it's half time and we're not quite where we need to be, the crowd will be with us as well. And try and push through and see where we get to. But it is a big 3 points, as a wise man once said. And we'll see where we land on Sunday night.
Is it a must win for both? Does a draw really hand that initiative? But it's really as Hearts to lose then if it's a draw.
Yeah, I think Celtic in their quiet moments would be quite happy with a draw in this one, personally, given the run in that is coming. Again, it all depends on other games, but I think coming out of this game, with the game in hand and touching distance, all that sort of stuff, I think quietly they would be pretty happy or appeased with a draw. We've still got to go there. Hearts, I think, have still got to go to Parkhead, and we've still got to go to Tynecastle. So yeah, if I was in the situation they are in with the team selection or the availability that they have, and the game obviously coming up at midweek as well, to quote Danny Röhl, maybe that would be a good point in the long run. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's all about us.
It is indeed, and we'll see where we are this time next week. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you, viewers, and until next time, bye for now.